Good evening. Today's June 8th, 2015, and I'd like to welcome you to the budget hearing for the 2015-2016 fiscal year of Weld County School District 6. The Board of Education is pleased to provide this opportunity to hear from any member of the public who would like to make a comment on the budget for next year. And I'd like to open the budget hearing by asking our Chief Financial Officer, Ms. Megan Sponsler, now that she's at the podium, to make some opening remarks. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, President DeWitt, Mr. Reeds, and members of the board. Pursuant to Colorado Revised Statute 22-44-110, any taxpayer residing in the school district is entitled to register his or her comments on the proposed budget with the Board of Education, either in writing or in person at a public hearing. The proposed budget for the 15-16 fiscal year has been posted on the district's website, and a copy is available at the district's main office if anyone is interested in reviewing it. At this time, President DeWitt, I will turn the floor back over to you to conduct the public hearing.
Thank you very much. Well, at this time, I will ask if there is anyone who has expressed an interest in making comment or asking questions about the budget. Ms. Brea,
no, there
to your
have
knowledge?
not been.
Well, this makes this meeting particularly brief. Thank you very much. There will be more discussion on the budget a little bit later, but at this time, the public hearing is now closed. Thank you. And as you know, the day is June 8th. It's Monday, June 8th, 2015, and we'd like to welcome you to the Board of Education meeting. You're welcome to enjoy the entire presentation or stick around just for portions that attain to you. But at this time, I would like to ask you to recognize that the board is now in session. And would you please join us in the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, Ms. Brea.
Mr. DeWitt?
Present.
Mr. Haefele?
Present.
Mr. Hall?
Present.
Mr. Lydiak?
Present.
Dr. Richard? Present. Mr. Richardson?
Mr. Richardson regrets that he can't be here this evening.
Mrs. Solis? Present. 6 members are present.
Thank you. The next item is appropriately labeled Board of Education President Announcements, and I do have an announcement to make regarding the past month or so. May and June have been months for celebrating the personal accomplishments of our graduating seniors, and we all want to congratulate all of those seniors in Greeley and Evans, including our GAP graduates who will be graduating a little bit later this month. Graduation puts a focus on years of individual accomplishments, and in addition to graduating this past month, 2 leaders from Northridge were brave enough to contact members of the school board to give us some guidance on processing of college transcripts and SAT scores and other information that might stand some improvement by the district. They reached out not for any particular personal gain, which I think is really important. They simply wanted to be sure improvements could be made so future students would benefit from their experiences. And I want to take a moment out this evening to express my thanks to Cassidy Francis and Sarah Dugan, for their poise and their leadership by example. So Cassidy and Sarah, do you mind coming forward just real quickly? I bet I can make it to the front of the room before you do.
I've seen you move.
I am really lucky since they had 3 times the distance to cover. Thank you very much. Really appreciate it. Would you stand there? You're in the right position. Thank you very much. The next item is hearing of persons desiring to speak before the Board of Education. Once again, I'll ask, Ms. Brea, do we have someone who's expressed an interest to speak with the board?
We do not.
Thank you very much. The next item is the work session report. Ms. Brea?
Board of Education President Roger DeWitt began the work session with open comments from board members and a review of the board calendar and upcoming events. Chief Academic Officer Dr. Stacy Dattery gave a presentation on the District Unified Improvement Plan and the WIDA access data. She discussed performance indicators and improvement strategies, gave an update on progress for the improvement plan, and presented the results of the WIDA access data for English learners. Dr. Dattery then presented on the READ Act, which requires intervention for students identified with a significant reading deficiency, and she discussed retention rates for the district. Chief Financial Officer Megan Sponsler discussed the proposed budget for the 2015-16 school year. Dr. Dattery led the discussion regarding revisions to policy IKA, grading and assessment systems. Board members had time for questions and discussion on these items, and that concluded the work session.
Thank you. The next item is the approval of the agenda, and that is an action item, and I will entertain a motion to that effect at this time.
I move that the Board of Education of Weld County School District 6 approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
Duly seconded. Is there discussion or question? Roll call, Ms. Britt.
Mr. DeWitt?
Aye.
Mr. Haefele?
Aye.
Mr. Hall?
Aye.
Mr. Lydiak?
Aye.
Dr. Richard?
Aye.
Mrs. Solis?
Aye.
And the motion carries 6-0.
Thank you. The next item is the 2015-2016 Weld County School District 6 budget adoption. Chief Financial Officer Megan Sponsler, who was here just seconds ago, is now poised to answer a few more questions or make a few comments. At this point, I will confess a little confusion. Should we read all three motions at this time, or just take them one at a time and permit you to respond to questions each one through? Thanks. This is a series of action items, three motions, and I would entertain motion number one at this time.
I move that the Board of Education of Weld County School District 6 adopt the following appropriation resolution. Be it resolved by the Board of Education of Weld County School District 6 that the amounts shown in the following schedule be appropriated to each fund for the ensuing fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2015 and ending June 30th, 2016. Fund amount: General Operating Fund, $168,166,865. Dental Insurance Fund, $1 million. Poudre Learning Center Fund, $252,152. Risk Management Fund, $1,705,000. Colorado Preschool Program Fund, $2,286,089. Food Service Fund, $10,518,381. Governmental Designated Purpose Grants Fund, $17 million. Platte Valley Youth Services Fund, $1,530,687. Bond Redemption Fund, $9,993,281. Capital Reserve Capital Projects Fund, $750,000. Scholarship Fund, $20,000. Student Activities Fund, $1,750,000. Athletic Fund, $300,000. Total appropriation, $215,272,455.
It has been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there a few bits of information you'd like to offer at this time, Ms. Sponsler?
Yes,
Thank
thank you. Pursuant to Colorado Revised Statute 22-44-103, the Board of Education must adopt and appropriate money in your budget prior to the beginning of each fiscal year. Tonight, we are bringing that budget forward, and the first motion has been read. Some highlights that are included in this budget are an increase in general fund operating revenue due to an increase in per pupil revenue from the state, but also an increase in the number of students who are enrolled in the district. This budget also reflects the proportionate share of that increase going to our charter schools for their students. This budget accounts for a 2% increase in pay for all employee groups. It accounts for horizontal advancement for teachers who meet the requirements, the 0.8% increase in para, and the increase in health and dental insurance cost. This budget places a priority on maintaining the existing staffing ratio, which is 25 students per classroom teacher at the elementary and middle levels and 27 students per classroom teacher at the high school. In addition, this budget accounts for the costs associated with opening the early college academy. This budget provides minimal funding to support the blended learning initiative so that the district can lease computers for students to use at blended learning schools. This budget also provides very minimal funding to transfer to the capital projects fund for maintenance and repairs. Finally, and perhaps one of the most important points that I would like to make tonight, is that this budget does not use reserve funds to balance the budget. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Believe it or not, there's been much discussion of this in work sessions, and we have had the opportunity to memorize this small document. But I would entertain any questions or comments from any of the board members at this time. Well, it has been moved and, oh, I'm sorry, Mr.
Yes, I was just going to ask Megan. Megan, just for everyone that has not been around us and some of our discussion, could you discuss a little bit about just a little bit about the importance of the elimination of reserve spending?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Please? And the importance of that?
Yes. We realized several years ago that there was going to be kind of a fiscal cliff, was the illustration that we used to describe what was happening. We foresaw the economy starting to slow down. And so we recognized that we needed to build up our fund balance, kind of our savings account. Then over the past 3 years, we've been spending down that savings account. We're to the point now where it's no longer financially prudent to spend that savings account down. The other aspect that I think is important for people to know is that we recently refinanced some of our bonds. So it's kind of like refinancing your mortgage. And of course, we have credit reports run when we do our mortgage. So we had a credit report done on the district. And one of the comments made at that time was that our credit rating was downgraded slightly because we had been continuing to spend down that fund balance. So in order to maintain our credit rating, it's really important that we continue to maintain the fund balance that we have and slowly build that back up.
Thank you.
Other comments? Dr. Richard.
Well, just an appreciation for the work that you and Superintendent Eads and all the staff has done, because this is a document that we've been working with for a while, and having an increase from the state, which is really our sole funding source. They allocate our money to us at 2.8% increase. It's not a lot to work with to dig out of a $2 million deficit spending model that we've been in. But we have been able to put our monies toward the things that are important, things that we know that matter to students. The Early College Academy, AVID, sports and clubs, special ed to gifted programs. So what we're investing in, I think, are the right things. There are certainly things that we wish we could invest in more. We know that it's really limited when it comes to capital projects. We know that it's a limited investment in technology. We also understand that it's a minimal raise to our teachers at 2% plus the health insurance and the PERA. But I think it's a real thoughtful use of the limited funds that we have, and the best way to spend the monies that we have. Thanks.
Thank you.
Ms. Elise?
I was wondering if you could just reiterate that if people have questions or want to see the budget, where exactly they go to, and then if they have a question, who would they contact with that question?
Absolutely. The budget is posted on the district website. There is a link, it's called the Financial Transparency link. You click on that link and you can see the budget document straight from there. You can also come to the district office and request a copy, and we can provide that to you. And then if you have questions, you can call the finance office, and you can get in touch with me, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
I have a question that you possibly know. I haven't asked you before. I never gave you a warning that this was coming. Would you be able to hazard a guess to a percentage or an amount of money that you would identify as being grant dollars from our budget approximately?
Yes, our budget approximately for grants, and that would be federal, state, and local grants, is around $17 million.
And I think that's a phenomenal amount of money, and I think the reason my question is posed tonight is that there's a person behind each one of those grants who read the instructions and the requirements, submitted the information, provided the documentation, and brought $17 million to our district. So
Yes.
if people are questioning our attention to detail in terms of fiscal responsibility, I think $17 million is a good answer to that question. I appreciate knowing that. And I kind of knew you'd know the answer, but I wanted to apologize in advance. Other comments or questions? Seeing none, it has been moved and seconded. Roll call, Ms. Brea?
Mr. DeWitt?
Aye.
Mr. Hafley?
Aye.
Mr. Hall?
Aye.
Mr. Lydiak?
Aye.
Dr. Richard?
Aye.
Mrs. Solis?
Aye.
And the motion carries 6-0.
Excellent. The next item is motion number 2 regarding transfer of funds.
I move the Board of Education of Weld County School District 6 authorize the transfer of the following funds. $1,700,000 from the General Operating Fund into the Risk Management Fund, $2,160,480 from the General Operating Fund into the Colorado Preschool Program Fund, $330,000 from the General Operating Fund into the Platte Valley Youth Services Fund, and $750,000 from the General Operating Fund into the Capital Projects Fund.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Have you more to offer from?
I would be
your
happy to answer
previous
any
review?
questions if
Thank
you have any.
Comments or questions from board members at this point? I'm not seeing new questions coming up, so roll call, Ms. Brea, please.
Mr. DeWitt?
Aye.
Mr. Hafley?
Aye.
Mr. Hall?
Aye.
Mr. Lydiak?
Aye.
Dr. Richard?
Aye.
Mrs. Solis?
Aye.
And the motion carries 6-0.
Thank you. The third motion that I'd be interested in, motion number 3, resolution regarding the authorization of the use of beginning fund balances.
I move the Board of Education of Weld County School District 6 authorize the use of the following fund balances for the purposes indicated. Pooter Learning Center Fund, $35,152 to cover expenses for repairs and maintenance. Colorado Preschool Program Fund, $125,609 to cover supplies and materials for the preschool program. Food Service Fund, $875,000 for supplies and materials and startup costs associated with creating a food hub. The Board of Education of Weld County School District 6 authorizes the use of the beginning fund balance for these funds for these purposes due to the fact that they are non-reoccurring expenditures and are funded from previously designated funds reserved for these expenditures.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Are there questions or comments from members of the board regarding motion number 3? I'm not seeing additional questions for you tonight. Roll call, Ms. Brea?
Mr. DeWitt?
Aye.
Mr. Hafley?
Aye.
Mr. Hall?
Aye.
Mr. Lydiak?
Aye.
Dr. Richard?
Aye.
Mrs. Solis?
Aye.
And the motion carries 6-0.
Thank you very much. Can we take a deep breath now and say, job well done?
Thank you.
Thank you very much.